Wow, it's live. Look at that. So, good afternoon. Good afternoon. So, I have been seeing some craziness in the world, haven't we? We've been seeing some craziness, and it's almost getting to the point where we're looking to do. Ooh, look at my encoder settings view on YouTube. There we go. So, what has been going on? Let's talk about the post-pandemic blues. Do you remember what was that song with Glenn Fry or Don? Yeah, it was Glenn Fry, right, from the Eagles about some sort of blues. Someone can chime in on that. But let's talk about emotional intelligence and resilience in this post-pandemic era, which may become a pandemic era. We may be in a post-pre-pandemic era, if that makes sense, right? But what we want to look at is our emotional intelligence, right? And what does that mean? What is emotional intelligence? And it's a powerful tool. And what we want to do is recognize what's going on, right? Recognize it. Where are we losing it? When I say losing it, losing perhaps control, losing perspective, maybe not having exactly the right or even close to the right emotional response to what's going on. And when we are fearful, when we're anxiety ridden, when we're having challenges around what to do next, we rarely do what's the best thing. We look for answers. We research, right? Tell me you don't Google something or you don't research that. When we're freaking out a little bit, we look for someone to say, this is what to do. Here's the answer. Here's the solution. Here's the next activity. If you've ever hired a coach, if you've ever worked with a mentor, what you're doing is you are looking for guidance. Now, that's fine and dandy when we are, doing fine in life and we're rocking and rolling and do what we got to do. That's great. But here's the challenge: when we're not rocking and rolling, when we're confused and we're freaking out, we need someone who's got more certainty, more confidence to go, this is what to do. Do this and you're going to be fine. And then we go, oh, thank you. That's what I needed to hear. I needed to know. I needed to do something. And I'm going to hit record here just in case, because I'm trying a new technology here. I'm doing restream through Zoom for fun. I'm trying to use all. We're getting ahead of, on top of technology. So here's a great answer. What did you do? What do you do when you're not knowing what to do around technology? Maybe you engage in some sort of training around AI. There's a seminar, a conference going on right now about AI and what to do and how to get to the next level utilizing it. Because if we don't, we're going to fall behind. So if this is true, if you and I, if we recognize that when we are stressed out, when we don't know what to do, what we do is seek out advice. We seek out some answers. When things start going nuts, and if you go back to that time, right, the 2020 era, when people were freaking out, someone was looking for someone with authority. When I say authority, I mean knowing what to do, not like I have the authority, but just who's got authority. Like I got it. Here's what we're going to do. Do this, do this, do this, and everything's going to be fine. So what did a lot of people do? They did this, they did this, they did this, so everything would be fine. Now, as we look back, we may look at the forensics and go, well, maybe that wasn't exactly the best thing to do. Maybe we acted rashly. Maybe we gave up some of our critical thinking to follow the advice of someone else. Now, without going down any conspiracy theories, without going down any of those paths, let's just put our common sense hats on. Common sense would dictate that you and I have enough brains, enough critical thinking, and ideally enough freedom to choose what to do, to make our best educated guess. And I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not suggesting whatever you did was right or wrong. You know what you believe would have been the right or wrong thing to do, and whether or not you look back and think, maybe I could have done things differently. I think we can all agree that we all did things that maybe, knowing what we know now, we would have done differently. And if that's the case, and this, by the way, has nothing to do with the pandemic exclusively. This is about connection and relationships and all the things that we do in life. Have we ever looked back at a relationship and thought, maybe, you know what, maybe I should have ended that a little sooner? Or maybe you look back and go, oh man, I wish I had asked that person out, or I wish I had applied for that position, or I wish I'd made that offer. Because in retrospect, as I look back, I think, there was a missed opportunity, or I took an opportunity that may not have been the most ideal and the best. So with that being said, let's think in terms of what would be the smartest thing for you and I to do if we were to put on our critical thinking hats. And as we look back at how the experience was during that crazy time, during that pandemic, how did that impact our community? How did that impact our job, our family, and all of that? And if we could look back and go, how might I have done things differently? Now, we do that with our careers, don't we? We look back, something happens and we go, my superpower is hindsight. Go, how could I have done this differently? What would have, knowing what I know now, if this were to happen again, how would I approach it? I mean, when I do interviews, one of the questions, I'm sure you've heard this question a million times, it's nothing new that I ask, is knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your old self, the entrepreneur starting the business, what would you tell them? How would you bring, I got in there twice, look at that. How would you bring yourself to the party, right? What would you do differently knowing what you know now? I'm looking at some comments here. It's all comments, Facebook users. Right. Yeah. Are we in a post-pandemic era? I don't know if it's an era. It's certainly a time. And what we're looking at is, how do we use our emotional intelligence? Right. How do we respond? Right. There's that recognition, and then the management. Once we notice it, I am experiencing something that is putting me in a non-resourceful state. Then what do we do about it? Right. So as a master practitioner and trainer of NLP, I use NLP techniques with myself and with the people I work with, whether we're coaching or consulting. NLP is a powerful tool, right? And it's really just an understanding of how our neurology works, how our language works, and then how we are programmed or conditioned, right? And the societal conditioning that we've been experiencing, there's been a major shift in how we show up, isn't there? Like, think about it. How have we changed the way we communicate? How have we changed? What do we do differently now? Has anyone changed the way we show up? How are we showing up differently? And I don't mean just by, are we, hugging and shaking hands and all of that, but we've changed how we work. Many of us went, like, if you had a job that you had an office, you went home likely. And then what did you do? You worked from home, and you had to be responsible for your own schedule and showing up. And then I remember people talking about, well, no, I got to sign on at least for these times because, the company that's how they're noticing whether or not I'm working, is if I'm showing up, and they're monitoring activity, XYZ. Right? So we're doing lots of different things now. And as we're going to go back into the office or have gone back into the office, the conversations are coming up. What does that mean? And I've heard some people going, hey, you know what? I'll take a pay cut. I'm willing to take a pay cut if I'm going to take a time in the office cut. I don't want to go in 5 days. I want to go in 4 days. So I'll take a cut in order to do that. So that's fine, right? There's some emotional management, getting clear, saying, okay, now I'm willing to, I know what I'm going into. I'm going to make this decision. There's a natural consequence potentially, right? I mean, if you're talking about results-based, then what do? You know, should it matter whether or not you come into the office or not? And again, I'm pro people. I'm pro getting in touch. This is a fantastic vehicle. I don't particularly enjoy doing trainings and so forth virtually. I much prefer them live. And the feedback I've received from most people is they much prefer the live interaction. However, there is a convenience factor with the virtual. Okay, I don't have to travel. I don't show up. I could just watch it from home. I could, leave my camera off and not do my hair or whatever. But we want to look at, again, moving forward. This world is changing rapidly. Business changes rapidly. How we deliver our products and services change. They transform. How are we going to show up? How are we going to lead? How do we lead? So if we're a leader, and I believe everyone is, it's just like when I ask the question, who's in sales? Anyone in sales? It doesn't matter what room I'm in. The salespeople all raise their hands like, yeah, I'm in sales. And then you may find some people who do other things that aren't transactional the same way, meaning transactions in money. They don't raise their hands. And I'll use a whole analogy, if you're hanging out with someone and, your friends and you want to go to Fridays and they want to go to Chili's. If you went to Chili's, you were sold. If you went to Fridays, you sold. I don't know why you want to go to either. It's just an example I use because it's fun to say those words. But the truth is, we are all leaders. You and I are leaders. Now, the first and most important person you and I need to lead is whom? Right? It's ourselves. It's ourselves. So how are we leading ourselves? Now, leaders do make fantastic followers, right? There's nothing wrong with a leader following something or someone. The difference between a leader that is enlightened, inspired, empathetic, is that they are processing this through the filter of, is this holistically the best person, thing, experience, to path to go down, to lead? Because as I follow, my experience, my body, my soul, my knowledge is all going to follow, as will people that I influence. Now, as a great example, if you talk about, let's look at marketing, right? Marketing, endorsements. Why do people get paid tons of money to get endorsements, to say, Nike, like, oh, wear the Nike clothes and all of that? Because that person is of influence and they say, oh, so-and-so wears Nike, Michael Jordan, Air Jordans, right? Oh, well, if they use them, they must be awesome. So I'm going to use them. So we follow. Why do you think in the 2020 time, you had a lot of influential people giving all sorts of the same thing? You do this, get the blank, don't do this, put on the blank. I mean, it's just, why do they do that? Because they know that they are influencers, right? Now, influencer is another word for leader, right? Leaders are influencers. Influencers are leaders. So when you get a bunch of influencers, what are they doing? They're saying, hey, I'm doing this, so you should too. I'm giving you permission to do this. As a matter of fact, I'll even say, if you don't do this, this is a bad thing. Now, if we were to put on our emotional intelligence and go, okay, wait, am I doing this because so-and-so says so? No, okay, just because they say to do it doesn't mean I should. Because there are plenty of things that people do that will tell you, oh, you do this. You go, I'm not going to do that. That's crazy. like little silly thing. It's so funny. Ellie's now 9, our daughter, and for some reason she's a little risk averse, which is crazy, because I guess I haven't led her down that path. Like she gets nervous about doing things, and she said things like, "Oh, why would you do something so risky?" Like, I don't know. She hasn't gone skydiving yet. We would like to do that, but I think you got to be a certain age. But the point is that we get trained at a certain level, what level of risk we're willing to take. And there's no right or wrong in it. We just want to look at how does that show up in our lives? That is an emotion, the fear, the challenge, the worry, or the excitement, the bliss, the fun, the achievement. So what you and I are doing now in this post-pandemic or pre-new pandemic or whatever is when we find a way to build our resilience, right? That emotional muscle of resilience. And this isn't a fixed trait, right? This is something that we can develop. This is something that can be strengthened with practice, with effort, by taking a stand, by really not getting sucked into stories and drama and just standing strong, standing firm. Now, there's a lot of ways to do that. And of course, when you work with us in the coaching and mentoring space, and this is where we work on some of these things. So one of the things that I just would throw out there and something to consider is also, connecting with your higher power, whatever that is, God, Christ. As a follower of Christ myself, that's where I hang my hat. Where can we dig deeper to find strength, to find resilience, to look back at some of these challenges that we've had, and what did we learn? How can we take the lessons from the past and use them as muscle, as strength moving forward? What if we can embrace, Tony Robbins, for those of you probably know who he is. He's my mentor for many years and very talented and wonderful man. One of the things he shares about the 6 human needs is about embracing uncertainty, right? Embracing uncertainty. So if you use a Tony model, you go, all right, let's get comfortable in uncertainty. We have to recognize that uncertainty is where we're going to experience that growth. We're going to find new ways to be willing to be uncertain, to be willing to be unsure. And what I'd suggest is, what if we also got into a mindset of exploration, right? Where we were able to dive into the unknown, be willing to challenge the status quo, be able to actually think in terms of, okay, I'm willing to recognize that the most successful people actually go against the system. So if we see 90% of the people doing one thing, odds are the opposite is going to be the most powerful, the most beneficial in so many ways. Right? What's the saying around investing, around stocks, right? When people are greedy, run. When people are scared, buy, go in, go after it. There's a saying, or it's not a saying, it's a study around animals and hurricanes. And the bulls, when a hurricane starts coming in, the bulls kind of run towards it. They run towards it rather than run away from it. When they see it coming and they can tell that it's coming, they run into it. But the cows run away. They try and run away, run away. Type in, if you're following this or you're watching this later, or you're still on here, so God bless you if you are. I love you. What movie is that from? Holy Grail, Monty Python's Holy Grail. But anyway, so the people, the things, the animals that run away from the hurricane actually have a much worse time than the bulls that run into the hurricane. Now, why would that be? You might be saying to yourself, Doug, well, that doesn't make any sense. Run away from the danger. Run away, run away. And in this analogy and many analogies, I'm going to challenge the runaway, that driving into it is the way to go. So let's unpack it pragmatically. Let's just put our common sense caps on. All right. So the hurricane is coming towards you. If you run away from the hurricane, what's happening? You're getting tired. You're going to be slowing down. The hurricane's going to bear down, right? So let's say you're going this way, running away from the hurricane. The hurricane's coming at you, right? You're going to get tired. Oh my gosh, this sucks. All right. And now here you are right here, and you're dying. Like, oh. So now as you're running away, probably during it, you're in the hurricane, and now you're going to be you're still trying to run away. You're still trying to run away because that's the direction you've been running. And now you're just being hammered by the hurricane. And then the aisle come, you're like, oh my gosh, finally. And then the other half of it comes, and you now have to go through all of that, and you're more tired, you're less resourceful, you're not anywhere where you're getting the benefits. However, if you are the bull, using that as I'm bullheaded, we run into the hurricane. So what happens as you're running into the hurricane? The hurricane is moving past you. You're actually going to get through the hurricane faster. And you're still running. It's the opposite of what most people do. It's counterintuitive. Now, I'm just saying, if there's a lot of news coming out telling you one thing and squashing the other thing, just putting it out there. Is it okay to question? Is it okay to say, yeah, you know what? I'm going to use, and this is where the resilience comes in. This is where the strength comes in. This is where the exploration comes in. Oh, I'm just curious. I'm just wondering. I'm not denying that there's a question to be had. I'm just curious, and I'd like to discuss it. And I'm just going to leave you with this thought. All the traveling I do, I travel a lot, speaking around the country, and I'm blessed, and it's my passion to help people communicate more effectively, to help businesses communicate more effectively, to connect more effectively, to help grow their business. The business's most valuable asset is their people. We need to connect even more. Especially right now, it's about post-pandemic, pre-pandemic, whatever. You and I, we need to be more connected, to God, more connected to each other, more connected to our critical thinking, our mind, our beliefs. We need to reevaluate them, and all of that. We're always in process. So anyway, a long story to tell you, I fly a lot. So I love going back and watching old movies, like movies I wouldn't necessarily see. I like to watch when I'm on the movie. And this was, I guess it was a play as well, but 12 Angry Men. I suggest you go out and watch 12 Angry Men. Such a powerful, powerful movie. And I'll just briefly share the concept. So 12, how many jurors are there? 12, right? So it starts out, someone is being tried for, they're accused of murder. Young kid, 17-year-old kid being accused of murder. And there's some racial component, but it's not huge in the film. This isn't what it's about. So they show that, and then it's like really quick. And then the judge is like, okay, jury, you got to go back there. You know the deal, beyond a reasonable doubt. We have, at stake. If you come back with a guilty verdict, the sentencing will be very likely the death penalty for this murder. So the 12 jurors, and then the rest of the movie is just these 12 jurors. And pretty much there's 11 of them who are like, he's guilty. He's guilty. Just look at him. You can see he's guilty. And Henry Ford's character sits there and he just goes like this. He goes, okay, I'm not saying he's not, but can we talk about this? I just want to have a conversation. I just want to talk about it. And I'll get to this question. Are we saying that when the ish comes, embrace it because we can preserve more energy than using the energy while trying to avoid it and being depleted when it inevitably happens anyway? Yes, and I'll unpack that a little bit more. So totally, thank you. So the 12 Angry Men concept thing is that the Henry Ford character just takes a moment and says, I just want to talk about it. I want to ask a question. I don't think we should just dive right into this and sentence this person to death. Like, can we just have a conversation? And there was a few people. So what was interesting is a lot of the conversation and the argument within the jurors was getting mad that someone was asking the question. I have a baseball game to go to. I don't like that. It's going to take too much time. Why bother? Black pill. Why bother? Because if we don't decide, it's just going to go to another jury and they're just going to put him to death. So we might as well just do it anyway. And Henry Ford's character stayed strong. He was resilient. He wasn't falling prey to the pressures of the other 11. He's like, okay. All I'm saying is let's just have a fair and honest conversation so that we can at least cover all the bases, right? Beyond a reasonable doubt. I, at the moment, don't have enough information to go either way, so I just want to ask some questions. Be wary of anyone not allowing us to ask questions. Because what happened is during this, he was able to slowly but surely start having people go, oh, wow, you know what? Now that we look at it, yes, like, great example. My cousin Vinny. It was like my cousin Vinny. When you remember that scene where he's like, oh, what? So your grits cook quicker in your kitchen than anyone else's? He's like, I guess, right? Well, there was something to be questioned. And so my cousin Vinny, that character, Vinny, Joe Pesci, unpacked the whole case against everybody because it was not 100% accurate. We have to be willing to ask that question. So, and I'm sorry, I don't see. I mean, if I go to, here's who it is. Who asked the question? Dean, yes, embrace the suck. Very little significant growth happens in the calm and easy zone. I don't know what that other question is about going through there. Well, love you, Dean. Love you, Chris. Yeah, embrace the chaos. Embrace the suck. Thank you, Dean. So to this comment, are we saying that when the ish comes, I guess the crap, embrace it because we can preserve more energy than using the energy to avoid it and being depleted when it inevitably happens anyway? Yes, and I'll tell you this. We'll go a little bit deeper. Most of the time, it doesn't happen. Whatever you're afraid of, whatever you think you're running from, usually doesn't happen. A good 80% of the things that we are afraid, if not more, that we're afraid are going to happen, don't. Now, again, I'm not, when it comes to that passive, I'm not minimizing necessarily what happened in 2020 and all that craziness, but we can say now, as we look back, that the information we had at the time, or we were given at the time, wasn't 100% accurate. That there were definitely things that when we look back, we go, oh, all right. Ooh, okay. Oh, those numbers were, oh, right. So what we were afraid of, and again, I'm not minimizing to say, I know people perished. I know there was some terrible stuff. And I also know that there were some other situations at the same time that the numbers weren't as bad. And that stupid, crazy questions like, well, has anyone looked at any contraindications of any medication? Are we sure that this is the exact same, the appropriate dose for everybody? Is it a one size fits all solution? Like you couldn't ask that question either. Right. So I'm just pointing out that possibility. You two Utes. Well, you remember from that. Well, so the two Utes. So Vinny basically unpacked, go back and watch it. It was a great scene. It was a lot of fun because he basically took apart all the testimony and proved Even though at the time when they shared it, it seemed plausible, it seemed real, it seemed reasonable and believable. So from a 30,000 foot view, you go, oh, that makes sense. He did it. They're guilty. Yet when diving in and asking some questions, that it turned out that everyone's testimony was inaccurate. They saw something, but they didn't see exactly. So I'm just putting it out there that let's build our resilience in taking a stand, in thinking, in being willing to go against the pushback, and just have and by the way, that's not making anybody else wrong for disagreeing with you. You can have your own position as well. Why can't we just have a conversation? Think about it. Don't you have friends or family? I mean, I hope you do. You have friends or family that you can have a disagreement with and have a different perspective, have a conversation, and then have a meeting of the minds. And you go, oh, okay. All right, I get where you're coming from. Okay. And then someone go, oh, wow, that information would have been helpful. I see. Okay. I now I get where you're coming from, and knowing what I know now, I would be doing the same thing you're doing, or whatever. Again, there's no right or wrong. We do this in our relationships. Those of you who know Heidi, we have our Love and Success podcast, which has just been launched, by the way, where we're different people. We have different opinions. We have different thoughts. We're not one mind. We're unified, and together we are Doug and Heidi, and separately we are Doug and Heidi, and we have our daughter, Ellie. And we each have our own thoughts, and it's okay to disagree. It's okay to have a different perspective. And by the way, we learn from each other by willing to have that conversation, by stepping into the unknown, by willing to explore, to get curious and say, oh, that's intriguing, interesting. Maybe when you see someone who you disagree with, simply ask them, well, just curious here. Like, why do you feel that way? Or where did that information come from? Or how does that impact you? Or how are you using it? Because at the end of the day, most of us have the same goals, the same desires. We're looking for the same thing to happen, meaning we all want to be happy. We all want to be successful. We all want to have something to celebrate. So what if God forbid, we're starting to see some writing on the wall, some, oh no, it's back. How convenient. What if we just assume the best of each other and recognize that, and this is the emotional intelligence and the resilience and the connection, and just assume the best and said, you know what? I may not agree with the way you're doing what you're doing, yet I understand it, and I'm okay. I'm not making you wrong for it. See, the challenge is when we think that everyone should do what we do, and we're not the same person, and we're not going to become the same person. I mean, I guess until we all die, and then we'll be part of the universe, part of God. But my point is, and who knows what's going to happen there. My point is that, man, if we could just connect on a deeper level and appreciate our differences of thought, differences of opinion, differences of beliefs. This is where emotional intelligence and emotional resilience and emotional management come into play, so we can connect on a deeper level. Because, man, if we come from a place like that, we come from love, honor, and respect, and say, hey, you know what? I may not agree with what you're doing, but I understand why. Right. I mean, something as simple as, I remember one day I picked up, Heidi had a big Mercedes diesel. Right. And so I pulled up, and the guy makes some comment about, the big truck and all of that. And I'm like, okay, no, I get it. But we have a family. We cart stuff around. Like, is it wrong to have an SUV? I don't know. And diesels actually do run pretty. It's not like an 18-wheeler. They run pretty clean. And again, not judging, you guys can, whatever. I have a Tesla, right? So it balances out. We don't have that truck anymore anyway. But point being is that, man, instead of looking at what people are doing and what they're driving and what they're doing, instead of judging them, just take a step back and appreciate where they're at, and that everyone is doing the best they can with what they've got. Everyone wants to take care of the planet, our society, our friends, our family. We want to be able to have a great life and celebrate great lives with others and help them create that. I mean, I can only speak for myself, speak a little bit for Heidi, is that's our goal. Our mission is to leave the world a better place than when we got here, to live, love, and give as much as possible, to be beacons of light of possibility, to add as much value when and where we can, to judge less and celebrate more. Now, I'm human and I screw up all the time. I fail miserably a lot. And I do my best to make amends, repair, take advantage of it. Right on the peace chain. There you go. Right on the peace chain. Love it. Yeah, man. If we could just stay in that centered, that resilient spot, know that we're bigger than any problem, that we'll be able to sort this out. And that actually, like, just pragmatically speaking, get off the distractions and be willing to go, what's actually going to be best right now for my family, for my friends. And then allow people to do what they're going to do, as long as it doesn't impede and impinge on us. And I'm not going to go down some of the conversations around in 2020 about how people justify, you have to do this because what was happening was you weren't even allowed to question it. And that's the issue. Just starting with that. So let's think more. Let's recognize that when we are in non-resourceful states, when we're angry, when we're frustrated, when we're depressed, when we're scared, when we're in fear, we are not functioning completely. We do not make the best decisions out of anger, fear, frustration, bitterness, resentment. It just doesn't happen. So when we're in that space, we got to step back and use that emotional intelligence, that resilience. And now we know, gang, the gift of what we have now is experience. What did we learn? And moving forward, how can we use it to our advantage? So with that being said, I love you for who you are and who you aren't. I'm going to post in here some comments. Heidi and I, we started our Love and Success podcast. Grabbed some old ones. We're recording new ones, but I also threw a bunch up that were older ones that we had done, that we'd recorded, but we hadn't put up on the podcast. So throwing that up there, and please stay connected, reach out, look for some new things that are coming that we're really excited about, bringing the love, the honor, the respect, so that we can create a love revolution. Like, join the revolution with us. So with that being said, God bless, and we'll see you.